Hello, this is Robert Peters. We have been traveling all across the country looking for initiatives, strategies for future focused schools, future focused initiatives and strategies for all children. And when we mean all, we mean all. We were in Los Angeles, future focused children for future focused schools for African American children. And we've been in New York looking at a portrait of a future focused system. We were in Ohio twice. We were in Cincinnati. We were in Youngstown looking at it from a systematic point of view, and then looking at how do you bring artificial intelligence inside the classroom to really help students out. Now, we really want to begin to get razor focused on our ELL students. We're seeing increases all across the country on a need for strategies, a need for future focused strategies in helping students, the ELL students all across the nation. And folks, I've got a treat for you today. As a matter of fact, if you fly into the Tri-Cities airport and you travel for about 45 minutes and you go over the Columbia River, you make the first actual exit and you make a right, you're going to go into this amazing community called Hermiston Schools. They have been doing some amazing work. As a matter of fact, when we're talking about exemplars in the field, they are definitely exemplars in the field. And I've got Dr. Jerad Farley, who's really going to be talking about how his demographics changed and how they actually began to look at future focused initiatives to support all students. So Jerad, say hello to the family, brother. Say hello to the family. It's good to have you on our series, man.
It's great to be here.
Hey, man. Hey, brother. Thank you so much for being a part of the work. And, man, thank you so much for just being a part of the work that you guys are doing there, man. First question is the what. Tell us your story, man. Tell us, what happened in the Hermiston community, and then the what that you did and the actual school district did to really build those future focused supports for ELL students.
Yeah. So Hermiston is a wonderful community. As you said, it's a great place. I'm not originally from Hermiston, but we've stayed here for a long time because of the wonderful community it is. Having said that, Hermiston is definitely a community that has experienced some changing, shifting demographics. Over the last decade, we've had quite a large swing in the percentage of our population that white population versus Hispanic population. But I don't think that even tells the story well enough. So if you were to go back to 2011-ish, we were about 52% white, about 45% Hispanic, and then, the remaining percentage, a smattering of, but now we're about 60% Hispanic and 36% white. So it's definitely swung. Mm-hmm. But again, like I said, I don't think that tells the whole story. One of the things that's very interesting about Hermiston in the state of Oregon, Hermiston happens to be, as a total number of students, we have the second highest number of students that are categorized as SLIFE. Mm-hmm. That's a category that stands for Students with Limited or Interrupted Formal Education. Mm-hmm. But taken as a percentage of our overall district population, we're the number one. We have the highest percentage of SLIFE students. We're well north of, we're about somewhere between 12 and 15% of our second language learners or third language learners or multilingual learners who are categorized as SLIFE. So we have a significant need in this district. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we're seeing in that SLIFE population is many of those are what we call third language students. I don't know if that's an official term anywhere. That's the terminology we use here in Hermiston. What we mean by third language students is we mean students who are coming from countries where they're living. They might speak a Mayan dialect language or a language other than Spanish. Mm-hmm. And so when we just say Hispanic population, people tend to say, "Oh, that must mean Spanish is right. That predominant language." But these students, they're coming from Central American countries where they speak Mayan dialects, but then they're living in communities where Spanish is the predominant language, and then they're coming into school learning English. And so these kids are encountering, when they're at home with their mom and dad, they're getting their native language. But when they're playing out in the street with their friends and neighbors, Spanish. And then they're here at school, English. And so these kids are really dealing with a lot. And So that's really our story. Our percentage of students that have that need has significantly upticked, and it's not going anywhere, and we don't want it to go anywhere.
Right.
These are wonderful families and wonderful kids. We have to do the best job we can for them, and I fundamentally believe that if we do the job that these kids need, and we're able to implement the strategies and the systems that these kids need, that these kids will go on and graduate high school being literate and fully trilingual many times, but certainly for our Spanish-speaking population, bilingual. And I think to continue with that, with the what portion, one of the things that we had to start with those shifting demographics, I would say probably about 4 or 5 years ago. If you had been in Hermiston, we had 5 elementary schools. We really were. We were a district of schools. We weren't a school district, right? Mm-hmm. So we had 5 elementary schools that were all doing very different things, using very different models. What we've done is we pivoted and said, we need to make sure that every single one of our schools all of our kids are going to get a great education and get what they need, regardless of what school we don't want to play the educational lottery. Mm-hmm. So that meant we had to get together as a team, a district office admin team, a building level teams, bring people together and say, what do our kids need? That certainly is beyond just our second language students or third language or multilingual learners, but it definitely applies to them. So we look at, because what we believe is good instruction is good instruction, right, no matter if you're a second language learner or a multilingual learner or you're a native English speaker. Good instruction is good instruction. Right. And when you look at most of the research around EL students and strategies that benefit EL students, guess what? It's the same stuff we would want for our kids, right? Exactly. For any kid. So visual representations, comprehensible input. Every kid benefits from that.
Exactly.
So the other part that goes along with that is when we really think about it. So in our district, one of the things that started a few years ago, before my time in this role, is we started a newcomers program. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we made sure we didn't do, that newcomers program only starts in third grade, and then it goes on into middle school. Why didn't we start it in kindergarten, first or second grade? And the reason is, when we have multilingual learners, they're learning some of the same things and same skills as our native English speakers are in kindergarten, first and second grade. Right. And that really comes down to what I was saying about that paradigm and the way we think about multilingual learners. If we know that good instruction is good instruction, and we don't look at our multilingual learners as being less than or having more need than other kids, we look at them as, hey, they need great instruction too, just like every other kid does. Right. So we're not going to isolate them. We're not going to separate them. We're going to give them great opportunities and great instruction. And so that paradigm had to come to life first. Coupled with that paradigm also has to be, we are not looking to eliminate their native language. We're not looking to. We have to honor and value their cultural identity, and language is so tied to culture that we have to honor their language. We value the language that they bring to the school setting. We do not ask kids, we would never. We want them to talk about in their native language at school. We want them to internalize what they're learning in their native language. Right. So I'm saying a lot of things, but all that to say that we have to honor the cultural identities of our kids. We have to see them as at those the things that they bring with us to school as assets, right, not as deficits. And we have to realize that all kids are language learners, whether you're a native English speaker or you're a multilingual learner. We're all language learners. And so that then brings us into really what is the underpinning of our philosophy, which is second language instruction, multilingual instruction is core instruction. Right. So we do not treat, and this is a big change, a big pivot in our model over the last 3 years. We do not take our second multilingual learners. We don't pull them out and give them something different, mm-hmm, right? We don't say, hey, you guys are missing these skills, and so we have to teach you these skills in a separate environment. We say all kids are language learners. So yes, we do still have a distinct classroom where these kids go just for a small portion of their day, just for a half an hour, right, where they receive language instruction. But while that group of students, those multilingual learners, are getting language instruction with a certified licensed language teacher, second language teacher,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of our kids are getting language instruction too. So all kids are language learners. And so those are some of the big things that had to exist in response to those changing demographics, and had to underpin our model in order for us to move forward. And because of that, then we were able to stack on those particular initiatives that have allowed us to see results.
Hey man, I love it. The first thing that I love is one thing you said was, like we want people to feel valued, like they are a part of so your native language, that is a value, right? We're not trying to change who you are, we're trying to give you the best that, and give you those strategies that you need to be successful because you're part of the Hermiston community. That's the one part that I saw that is extremely important. Another thing you talked about was consistency. At the beginning, it seemed like different schools were doing different things, but the level of consistency to bring all people together to really focus on children. And then the last piece, man, that I really heard you say, Jerad, was, the level of instruction. We're not pulling you out. We are going to up our level of instruction to ensure that those students are successful in our class, right? Those are three paramount pieces that I think are great in any instructional philosophy and initiative, specifically when we're talking about ELL students, okay? But the next question is this, man. We know that those three things are paramount, but we've got people here, Jerad, they're going to say, man, how? Give me the how, right? That's the what. I love the what in the first installment, right? The what is great. But when we begin to think about, like, how are you guys doing it? What are you seeing as far as successes are concerned? And then what kind of advice would you give? Let's say if I'm in a school district, because there's a school district that I just worked with in Columbus. They were once Anglo, and now they're over 50% African American, right? Mm-hmm. So now with these changing demographics, how do I begin to facilitate these future focused strategies and ensure that all students are successful?
Yeah. I think starting with what do we believe the system? What do we believe the essential function of schooling is, right? And is our school here for all kids, or is it only here for some kids?
Right.
And I think we have to get the right people, to use an oft-used phrase, to get the right people on the bus that can develop that vision and that belief, that core belief. So I do think there's a lot of work around what is our belief, what do we believe about our work, what do we believe our purpose is, what do we believe about our kids, what do we believe they're capable of, and that sounds very touchy-feely and kind of pie in the sky, but it's tantamount to the rest of it working, right? So we started there. So to tell you Hermiston's specific story, when we started this work, it coincided with, in our state mandates a English learner curriculum adoption every 7 years. And so we happened upon that a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, where we were looking at different curricular materials. And so what we did is we leveraged that adoption process to redesign our EL model and said, okay, if we're going to be adopting new materials, before we can even consider what materials might best fit our need, what do we believe about our kids? What do we believe our purpose is? What do we believe specifically about multilingual learners? And then once we develop that vision, then what materials might best support us in that? So what we did is we formed an ELD, because in Oregon it's often referred to as English Language Development. We formed an ELD committee, and that committee is comprised of EL teachers from all across our district. I'm on that committee. We have building principals on that committee, and we developed a vision statement. And it's not like I've been in lots of schools over the years where they develop a vision statement and then afterwards it goes in someone's desk and it never gets looked at again. But that wasn't ours. Our vision statement was really, this is what we believe about our work. From that vision statement, we developed a list of priorities. How are we going to do this? And some of the things I've already mentioned are a part of that. Our priority list is having great materials, having really strong assessment practices, all the things that people want to do. But it couldn't have happened if we didn't have the shared leadership, if we didn't have the buy-in from that group, because all of those folks, when they go back to their building, they're creating the work. So when their colleagues push back on things, they're able to stand up and champion that message. But none of it would have worked if we didn't reframe how we thought of multilingual instruction, that is core instruction. All students are language learners.
Right.
So then from there, we identified, okay, what are the priority standards? Let's look at the English language proficiency standards. We know it's core instruction, right? So we're going to look at the third grade English language proficiency standards, the fourth grade, the fifth grade, and then what are the priority standards in those grades that we really want to focus on? It's not that we're not going to teach some of them, but we're going to pick out what are the ones that we want to guarantee all of our kids get, and then fold in those other standards as supporting standards underneath that. So we did that work. We had our list of priority standards, and then from there we said, all right. And again, I didn't pick those. The group of teachers picked them. I just facilitated. And so our group of EL teachers, our ELD committee, they selected those standards. And then from there, we said, okay, then what should instruction look like? What should our scope and sequence look like? How are we going to utilize these materials? Another thing that we fundamentally believe in Hermiston is that the instructional materials don't tell us what to teach. We decide what to teach based on our students' needs, based on our priorities, all those things. And so we don't follow any scope and sequence out of a curriculum guide. We determine that based on what we think is best and right for our kids. So giving our teachers some flexibility. Now, in order to do that, you got to give them a lot of training, a lot of support, and how to select out the best lessons to teach those priority standards. But essentially from there, we created our scope and sequence for those priority standards. Then coupled with that, like I said earlier, you have to have strong assessment practices. Well, one of the things that we changed in Hermiston a few years ago, certainly in EL and in our other subject areas, is we realized we didn't have any assessments that told us, the district-wide assessments, common formative assessments that told us how our kids responding to core instruction. So we've developed what we call benchmark assessments that allow us to monitor. We give those 3 times a year, that allow us to monitor how our kids responding to core instruction. And those assessments are not to place blame on teachers, to place blame on schools. Those assessments are 100% about where are our kids and what do they need next. And again, that's why I keep saying you can't implement a system like this if you don't believe that language instruction is core instruction, because if you don't believe that, then you can't have a scope and sequence. Because if it's seen as an intervention, then you're always looking at individual kids and saying, what's that individual kid's need? And you're trying to address that individual need. We have to say, no, this is grade level instruction. And we're still going to figure out what kids' needs are, but in order to bring them here, not to fill gaps, not to say, here's all the things you're lacking and how do we fill that? This is where we need you to get. Where are you? And now let's make a plan to get you there. It's a very different way of thinking about it.
I love it, man. A lot of the times, and this is what we see in a lot of communities all across the country, right? When we're looking at, all children, sometimes there's a deficit thinking in people's minds, right? So I like the first thing that you said was the belief that children can be successful. Because a lot of the times we kind of get this, poor little child, or pobrecito, or this, he's or she's dealing with a lot of pieces. And we understand that there's their health, there's some mental health pieces there. But at the same time, the level of expectation should always be here, right? Because we truly understand that, listen, our children, we've got to have high expectations for those children. And we have to understand that all children can be extremely successful, and we can have future-focused schools for all children. That's number one. So I love that piece. Then the next piece is now we've got to organize ourselves, right? We've got to get a good set of team to really begin to organize ourselves around this level of instruction and look specifically at these priority standards that we know that we need to focus on. After focusing on these priority standards, then we've got to make a kind of a scope and sequence of how we're going to focus on these priority standards. And then another piece that you said, Jerad, that was phenomenal and paramount. And now we've got to make sure that we support our teachers in professional development on how to facilitate this work, right? Yep. So when you're talking about the how, you're almost giving this, hey man, and you gave it to us free, man. You didn't put an actual copywritten piece on it. You didn't say, hey, this is the Dr. Jerad Farley system, right? You said, listen, you're giving us this system where it starts with this mindset and it ends with this professional development support system that gets teachers ready to facilitate the work inside the classroom and the modeling around that. So it's like the belief, I hear the consistency, bringing a team together, the priority standards, the scope and sequence, the actual after the scope and sequence, the professional development, and then the facilitation and the modeling, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about if you're able to do those steps as a school district when it comes to ELL children and when it comes to all children, you're going to be successful, man. So one thing I want to let everyone know, y'all, if you're in Oregon, I'm telling you, you've got to go to Hermiston School District, man. I have been so many times, and I'm telling you, man, I enjoy my time there because, one thing I can say is, people say, okay, we're a community school district. You haven't seen a community school district till you go over into Hermiston. You're talking about a grow your own, man. You're talking about people that start in high school and end up going through a system, a process where they become teachers in their own district. You're talking about a superintendent, man, who truly believes in bringing individuals together and building a strong team. And Jerad, man, thank you so much for the hard work that you're doing there, brother. Now, folks, if you want more of what Jared's talking about, right? Jerad is going to be, as a matter of fact, Jerad just put in, I saw it, man, you just put in a proposal for facilitation at the conference, right? At the Future Focus Schools conference in June.
Yep.
He's going to be talking with us about this ELD department, some pieces that they've really been working on and some successes that they've seen. Come to the Future Focus Conference in June. Jerad will be there. The Hermiston team will be there. We'll have teams all over the country really talking about future focused schools for all children. That is what we're all about, right? We're about future focused schools for our ELL children, our African American children, children that are in poverty, whether it's rural, urban, suburban. We're talking about building future-focused strategies for all children. And Jerad said it here. It's with a high-level core instruction. That is where it starts, right? There's no silver bullet. We've got to make sure that we have our children, have our teachers ready to set those high levels of expectations and make sure that we put that professional and that staff development to get our teachers there, to get our actual students there. So Jerad, man, hey, I know you could have been doing a bunch of things on a Friday in May. So thank you so much for taking your time out to be on our series. Again, folks, that link is at the bottom of your screen. You want to check Jerad out, click on it, folks. Come on down. DC will be there. Jerad will be talking about his work, and we'll be having professionals and experts from all across the country talking about the great future-focused work in our district. Jerad, I appreciate you, brother.
All right, man.
Hey, have a good one, man. Enjoy your weekend, all right?
See ya.